Hi everyone, my name's Alex and this is Tank Tested. Today we are doing aquariums with strangers and I have a good friend of mine, Ted Judy, who is the host and proprietor of Ted's Fishroom, which is a YouTube channel that long predates my own. So I want to introduce Ted now. Hi Ted, how are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. So today we're going to do something kind of special. We're going to look at nature for inspiration. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of where we're going to go today and where you've got footage of?
Sure. When Alex and I have always talked a lot about aquascaping in general, and about 4 years ago, I gave a talk to the Chicago Aquatic Plant Society. They asked me to give a talk about places I've been in the world that would give inspiration to aquascaping, and it became a talk called Pretty Places. And really, it's just a collection of places that I've been fortunate enough to have visited that can in some way, at least to me, inspire and not some ideas for an aquarium. So we're going to go visit two places in Mexico, two completely different habitats in Mexico. We're going to visit a habitat in West Africa, and we're going to visit a very special place for me in Colombia.
Cool. So I think let's start with Mexico. But before we do, I'll also say that I'm also going to show you two places that I've been to. So I'm going to show you Florida, and I'm going to show you Brazil. So
when you mentioned last week when you had Rachel on about going and doing native stuff, I almost sent you footage from Missouri and said, throw this in, because I tell people all the time, I have videos on Ted's Fishroom. They're called Fish Watching, and I'll do it in my local streams nearby. And I love to travel. I am very fortunate to be able to travel throughout places in the world. Who knows if that'll ever happen again? Honestly, I never know at the end of one trip if I'm ever going to go on another one again. And that's the truth of it. And I have as much fun and as much interest snorkeling in North American streams. We have fish fauna and invertebrate fauna that are fascinating and beautiful. And it's well worth just going and looking your local native streams. So kudos for you for getting out there in Maryland and DC and Virginia doing that.
I mean, I agree. I think that for everyone at home, you don't have to go to remote places to check out incredible wildlife and incredible ecosystems. Basically, all civilization is based around water, which means there is a waterway near you. And almost certainly that waterway has life in it. So you don't have to go that far.
And Florida is spectacular. With all the spring rivers, Florida is spectacular.
I agree, but we're not going to start with Florida. We're going to start with Mexico. Now, Ted, I don't think that you can see what video clip is playing right now.
Oh, is it playing?
Yeah, I just started playing a video clip.
So if I can't see the clip, then I really can't explain what's happening in it.
I'm trying to think, like, what is the solution to this?
Well, the solution for me is to scoot this over and open up the YouTube channel.
Yeah, why don't we do that? You're going to be on about a 30-second delay, but this video is just going to loop. I say that. I'm going to make sure this video is about to loop. Loop.
Opening YouTube. Stop.
Oh no, copyright infringement.
What?
Anyway, up on screen while Ted gets loaded up is footage that he shot in Mexico. And I think that the reason why you loaded this up was because there's a lot of familiar species in this habitat. So,
there we go. All right, now I can see.
Yeah. Now it's going to be delayed, but can you tell us a little bit about what the animals are, or what the fish are, plants are? Also, can you mute the video?
I did.
Yeah.
I just muted it.
Rocking.
And I'm going to reduce it. All I really want to be able to see is what's happening on that video. So you've stopped it right now, and go ahead and start it.
Oh, it's rolling. It's rolling.
Oh, it's rolling. Okay, so so it's hard for me to see. But anyway, okay, so I'll just explain where we're at, and I'll kind of tell you what's in the video. Maybe you guys can point it out. I was hoping to be able to point out specific things. So Hidalgo is a town in northeastern Mexico, north of the city of Monterrey and south of Brownsville, Texas. Actually very close to the Texas border. And what we're at is we're actually in a stream that's a part of a park, almost like a city park. I was there for an event in Monterey. They have a big aquarium event every spring, and I was fortunate to be invited to be a speaker. And then on Sunday, they take everybody up and they have a picnic there. So what I thought was fascinating about this place was there were so many plants that we are, oh, hey, I can see it kind of. There are so many plants that we are familiar with in the aquarium hobby. So like, I think you just saw an Eleocharis, a hairgrass. Now the one you're about to look at, I don't know what this is. Maybe somebody can help me, but it's a very red plant, almost like looks almost like a Rotella wallacei, but it's not. Earlier you saw red Ludwigia, which is a very common aquarium plant. There was Mexican oak. And these plants that are growing in nature. And then usually on this part of the video, I like to say, and if anybody has algae in their aquariums, it all looks great because there's algae all over nature. So I think you were just getting to a section of the video that shows a big, huge column of red Ludwigia coming up out of deep water.
Yeah.
And that's how it grows.
So I'm trying to solve the riddle of being able to show video and also allow you to see my screen. And it's not a thing that I've cracked the code for.
Okay.
Normally I have been able to make this work, but before I was using, I'll give a little insight as to what's gone wrong. So earlier today, I dropped my phone and it broke. And typically I've used my phone as my camera, and then I've screen shared whoever I'm interviewing. Because I can't use my phone anymore, I can't do that. So now I've got to come up with another solution. And for that, it means that we kind of got to speak generally rather than specifically in this instance. But I will transition to a still shot of, it's the second shot that you shared with me.
So yeah, just throw that up. I'll be able to see that. And
so do you happen to have, sorry that we're doing this live, everyone, but do you happen to have all of the images that you shared with me so that you can see where we are in the process? Anywhere?
Yeah, I could open up that file.
Would you be up for like, so that way you can see what the list of images are that we're going through, so that you can speak more knowledgeably about what it is we're looking at?
These are all things, and here it is. All right. So we just showed clip number 1. That was Hidalgo. You're going to go to clip number 2.
Yeah. So
clip,
image number 2.
Image number 2. All right, I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's red Ludwigia. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to Alex about, the reason I wanted to do this live stream was I really wanted to get into a discussion about what you're seeing on the screen in these habitats from an aquascaping perspective. And the reason I chose Hidalgo is because most of us would look at this and say, that's not a pretty aquarium, but look at the plants. And my experience throughout the world has been, you got places that have beautiful plants, and then you've got places that have got incredible hardscape, but very rarely do those two things come together in one place. And Hidalgo is an example in my mind of a place that has got beautiful plants, healthy, big, robust, colorful. The red Ludwigia is just crimson red. But the stream bed is a bunch of algae covered cobbles and pebbles. There's almost no structure. There's almost no wood. I think in the video, if you played a lot of the clip there towards the end, you did get to like a big log that had some actual Texas cichlids with that big, huge column of red Ludwigia coming out of it.
Yeah,
I could
I'm
see something
transitioning
like,
back to the video, but continue talking about
yeah.
that.
So,
Yeah.
but I don't think that, but even then, I think you would look at that and you would go, who is going to have an aquarium, an aquascaped aquarium, that is a log with big pebbles at the bottom and one big, huge column of red Ludwigia? I mean, I think it would look absolutely fantastic.
It could look really great.
But most people, when we think about aquascaping, that's not the kind of habitat or kind of thing that we want to recreate in our aquarium. So that's really why I shared this Hidalgo clip. Beautiful place, beautiful plants, beautiful fish. When you're standing there looking around, you're going, wow, this place is fantastic. But if you took a 100-gallon aquarium and set it down in the middle of the stream and tried to see what part of that would fit in there, you wouldn't see much that would say this makes a beautiful aquarium.
Right, and I think that's something that people lose in like creating a biotope, that they want to jam everything in, and a biotope really is just like a little teeny chunk. And I don't know what your experience with going out in the wild is. Mine is that there are often a lot of species of fish, but there's rarely more than 1 or 2 species of plants in any given area.
Yes, that's very true. And that's the other reason I chose that Hidalgo clip, is because there are many species of plants.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't include were some of the still photos of the marginal stuff and the like the big, huge masses of taro and the elfin ears and emergent plants that are coming out. And that is where, honestly, in the wild, that's where you see the huge diversity of plants at the very edge. That's why I'm extremely excited about this new interest in paludariums, because if people really start getting into biotopes and paludariums, now you're talking about being able to show a huge amount of plant diversity. I didn't include it in this talk, but it's in our Pretty Places talk. There's a habitat in Colombia that's black water, extremely black water. And once the water gets about 1.5 feet or 2 feet deep, there's not enough light to support plant life. So all the plants are on the edge. So the edges of the stream are just lush, and the aquatic plants are lush for about 6 to 8 inches deep. And then it just becomes nothing. But
That's
off on
interesting.
shore, it's all there.
That's really interesting. That's really cool. So I've got a question for you from the chat. Sir Prawn a lot asks, what type of fish are in this system? Do you know?
Here in Hidalgo?
Yeah.
The cichlid is Hericles sanogotatum, the Texas cichlid. Okay. There is Texas mollies, Pasilia mexicanum. There are shiners. There's some species of shiner, like a North American shiner. There's probably a Gudeiid there, but I'm not exactly sure which one it is. And then there is an Astyanax tetra, the Astyanax mexicanum, the Mexican tetra. There are probably some like mad tom type catfish that are there. There are no loricarids there. There are no corycats. This is not South America. This is actually North America. So that's really about it. Remember, this is desert. This part of Mexico is desert. So these streams, and we're going to go to another place in Mexico on this journey this evening, which is even more refined, but it's desert. So the only animals that live in it are those that are remnants of lakes and rivers that used to be there. So the species diversity, aquatic species diversity, is extremely low. Terrestrial species diversity is extremely high, but not a whole lot in there as far as fish go.
Right. So I've actually transitioned now. Let's see. We'll transition to a still shot of a beautiful, beautiful red plant. I assume this is Ludwigia, correct?
Are you on number 2?
I am now on number 4.
Okay, yes, this is red Ludwigia. And what you're looking at in that picture is a photo taken from underwater. Actually, it's a video still of being at the kind of under the plant going up towards the surface. Now, in the deeper water, the red Ludwigia grows in columns and bunches that are about 4 feet or 5 feet tall. That's how clear the water it is and how bright the sun is. And then as it gets to the surface, I don't know if you look very closely along the very top of that, you can see the gas bubbles coming off of it. In the video, you would be able to see them come off. And there's just pumping oxygen. And that's actually at the base of that plant. It gets down to the bottom and it's very dark and there's almost no leaves. It's all just stem. And then it's this big, huge column, probably about maybe 1.5 foot to 1.5 foot in diameter, that goes up towards the sun and then spreads out at the surface. So almost all the photosynthetic aspects of the plant are up near the surface. And I tell you, people have said, oh, column tanks, who wants a column tank? How can you make a column tank look good? And I said, give me a metal halide and red Ludwigia and I'll make a column tank look good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how you would go about it, because with lots of stem plants, I think most stem plants, they start to lose their leaves at the base of them because they're shading themselves out. So that's why stems are a great background plant. But if you've got some nice hardscape, if you've got some nice like big chunks of wood or rock, you can kind of hide all those like scraggly bits, and you could really have something beautiful.
In the video, the base of that column of plant is where that pair of Herichthys cyanogatum, the Texas cichlids, were defending a territory down there. I think in the aquarium hobby, especially in aquascaping, we think of hardscape and we think of wood and we think of rock. Yep. And we don't often think of the plants themselves as being structural. But in this habitat, that plant is structural. The base of that clump, around it is nothing. It's just this clump of plants growing up out of the bottom of the river with a log maybe about 2 or 3 feet away. But it itself is a habitat. It is a niche. It's a place that those fish can defend. And we're going to see a much better example of plants being structure when we get to the other place in Mexico.
Cool. Well, I'm also going to transition to this shot that's from above the water so that I think people can see exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, that's it. There you go. So if the photo before, in this photo is the bunch of plants that is to the right of that log. I'm standing on the log, and where that bunch of plants is about 3.5, 4 feet deep. And so that you can see a bigger column coming up towards the end of the log. It's even brighter red. If you look out over the water, you can see several of those columns coming up. So
yeah. And how deep is it out at the distance of that photo?
Probably about 4 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does that mean that there's like a foot or two of just stems where there's almost no leaves?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I wasn't, unfortunately, I didn't bring my snorkeling gear. I just wasn't there prepared to go swimming, and I really should have been if I had known what it was going to be like. Now, the water was cloudy. There was a lot of people in the park that day. I would love to go back to that location on like a Tuesday morning when nobody's there. We were there on a Sunday, and the entire town of Hidalgo was in there having picnics and swimming and all kinds of stuff. I would love to go back when that water is crystal clear, because it is. It's crystal clear. Slip into it with a snorkel and a camera and see what you can see. Let's go.
Yeah, right? If only we weren't trapped in our houses right now.
We can get in the car. Let's go.
That's true. So I've transitioned us to, now I want to show you footage that I shot in Florida. So if you want to go back to the YouTube channel, it'll come up in a minute or so.
Right.
So you'll be a little bit delayed. And you can see my old logo before I switched over to this more like minimalist logo. But I was down in Florida filming Modern Explorer, which actually just came out with Nat Geo a few weeks ago. And I had like an hour before I had to go back to the airport, and I was by all of these pools that form in Florida. So this is not, this isn't a spring. These are like the floodplains where it's basically coral heavy.
Tell me again where you were at.
Central Florida.
Be specific.
I can't tell you specifically because then
Oh.
I'd be telling you the name of the town where the person lives, and I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
But so this was Central Florida. It was about an hour north of, or an hour away from Orlando.
Palatka? Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
And what I found really fascinating in this whole system was there were only a few different species, but it was definitely so much more lush and so much more overgrown than I really expected, because I'm very much used to my own local streams where there's not a lot of plant life. There's some, but you have to look for it. I've never really snorkeled in a pond before. And snorkeling in a pond is a very, very different experience. Have you ever done anything where you've gone in like still water rather than streams?
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite things to do here in Wisconsin in June, early June, when the bluegill are spawning, there's a lake in Madison called Lake Wingra that's crystal clear, relatively shallow, and you can wade out into the bluegill beds. But I like to snorkel in that and just watch the bluegill spawning. There's other species of sunfish too. Actually, there's a video on Ted's Fishroom that of taking video underwater of that happening back there somewhere. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So also link to Ted's Fishroom is in the description of this video for all of you watching right now. But what I found like really, so I've also watched bluegills, but I've never actually snorkeled with them. In the streams by my house, I see the bluegills kind of building their little nests for spawning.
Oh, so now I see Florida. So that's a big pond.
Yeah, it's a big pond. It's probably a half mile from side to side.
Right. I saw this video on your channel. Now I remember it.
Yeah. Well, see, now you don't even have to watch it. You just it's embedded in your brain. But what I found was there were definitely, when I looked over the footage, I saw a couple of different fish that I didn't see when I was, just out there. But basically all I really saw were mosquito fish. And it was just a really interesting habitat to see them kind of hanging out, doing their thing. And it certainly shifted my perspective of, well, for a couple of things. So there's some fish where we could never simulate the flow that a lot of fish require from their streams. Shiners, for instance. I mean, that's really hard. But then there are also really, really stagnant systems. And I wish that I had a little bit more experience with all the different habitats that our fish come from, because it definitely informs how you build the tank, not just from an aesthetic point of view, but from a flow point of view. Have you ever taken that into consideration?
I do. As a matter of fact, the whole biotope thing, I go round and round and around with people in different organizations about biotope. And I said, the problem with biotope aquariums is a matter of scale. So we cannot reproduce in the aquarium the scale of what you're seeing in an actual biotope. You take a pair of Texas cichlids, for example. That pair of Texas cichlids in that little place in Hidalgo, Mexico, were defending an area that was probably 10 feet by 10 feet by 4 feet deep. And there were other fish in there, but they were the only pair of cichlids that were in there. So if you're going to try to recreate a biotope, you better be prepared to have an extremely low fish density. That's the big issue. You've been to South America. You've been and seen parts of the Amazon, or in your case, where you probably saw decent numbers of fish density, huge schools of
crazy fish density.
Right. But taking into account the entire body of water that you were in, it was a relatively small amount of space. And hopefully we'll get to it, but the very last file I put in here for you is kind of a bonus. It's a habitat in Colombia that we call the aquarium, and it's a spring. It's a spring that comes up out of the water, but it spills over extremely shallow. So it creates this place where no predators have been able to get into it. So it's the closest thing I've seen to what I would call aquarium density, where you have a relatively small body of water packed with fish. It's the only place I've ever seen it is that spot.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to think, like, what spots have I seen that have density that aquariums have? And it's certainly areas that have some sort of limiting factor that stops predators from getting in, for
Right.
sure. Ends up being like, there are definitely pockets of a couple of streams that I know of where the water around that area is only like an inch or two deep. So
Right.
then it bottoms out because there's a rapid, and in that rapid you have a huge
Exactly.
school of fish.
And not only is it a barrier for predators getting in, but it's a bit of a barrier for fish getting out. I mean,
Right.
so what is an aquarium? An aquarium is a body of water that fish can't get away from. So really, it is.
It's a trap.
So we used to say that rainbows are stupid because they hit the glass all the time. Well, it's
Right.
because they see the world out there and they got to try to go to it. They're in a closed box. We're on the outside looking in and we have the world around us. Fish can see, they actually can see across the room. If you ever have a fish like a cichlid that knows you're coming, I used to walk into my fish room and fish that were 15 feet away would see me coming going, here comes the food. So they know the world's out there. They just can't get to it.
Yeah. Well, that's worse. So Joey just gave a very generous super chat, which I want to thank him for, and thank him for stopping by.
Hi, Joey, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I mean, Joey as well. We're all like kind of in this little community together. So while Joey's here, I thought maybe let's transition into the next spot, which I don't know how to pronounce it. So it's with an M. What are we working with?
Mandemba.
Mandemba.
Actually,
where is that?
So yeah, there's no video here. Okay.
Nope. So we're just starting with the wide shot of the stream.
Okay, so my very first ever trip anywhere in the world was to Cameroon. So I went big the first time around. And it was before video camera, well, not before video camera, before I had a video camera. So everything I have there is still shots. So Mandemba is a very typical, I shouldn't say typical, it's an atypical West African stream that happens to be choked with plants, just absolutely just loaded with plants. So this first image you're seeing is just kind of a big overview of the area. It's black water. The water is very acidic. The water is very low in hardness. It's got a lot of tannin in it. Go ahead and click over.
Yep. I've clicked over to image 7. No, sorry, I've clicked over to image 8 like a fool, which is a close-up.
You already got.
I'll go to image 7. So image 7, it looks like we've got some crypts there.
These are crenums.
Crenums.
Yeah, these are crenums. So this is probably crenum natans, or it's light crenum natans. It has a very crinkled leaf. But look at the density of that plant. And so in the stream, if you could see the whole stream, you're looking at an area that is maybe 20 or 30 feet long by 20 or 30 feet wide. That is nothing but this plant. And it fills the water column from the bottom of the stream up to the surface. So water is flowing through it and over it. And that bunch of plant itself is the habitat in the water. And that's the other thing about aquatic plants. You mentioned to it earlier where you sometimes see one plant. In nature, that one plant often dominates, and not only dominates the habitat, but dominates the space where the plant itself becomes the habitat. So if you try to recreate that micro habitat in your aquarium, we often, sometimes we as aquascapers, we aesthetically look at people whose plants go from front to back and left to right, and they completely pack a tank. And we go, oh, well, you don't have the artistic view of that. Yeah, but that's the most natural thing you've seen. If you put a 10-gallon tank with no bottom and stuff it straight down the bottom of the stream, that's what you're going to end up with, is plants left to right and front to back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the you know Rachel O'Leary's 150-gallon Hillstream tank,
Yeah,
that it has a base of basically a carpet of crypts.
right.
And when I first saw it, I was like, wow, that feels like that's really overgrown. And now I look at it, I'm like, gosh, that really feels like that's the most accurate version of
And
what a
what
biotope would look like,
and
frankly.
what's really nice about that is the water is deep enough that you have space above it. But crypts live part of their year, as we're going to see in the next slide. These
Yeah,
aren't crypts,
transitioned
but
right
they're very
now.
similar. So you're transitioning to number 5, right? Or number 8.
Yeah.
So this is the edge of that stream. So now you're looking at the marginal plants that are over there on the right, and then you see those crenums that are in the water to the left. Now, these crenums are not emergent. They don't have an emergent growth form, so they're only available in the water. What you're seeing over there on the right is the rock. And what really reason I put Mandemba in this presentation is let me back up a little bit.
It's some beautiful rock.
It's a beautiful rock. You can go in nature and you can see examples of incredible hardscape where there's no plants. And you can see examples of beautiful plants when there's no hardscape. But it's very rare to find a place that if you just kind of put your fingers up and said, what would an aquarium look like? And it would be a beautiful aquascaped aquarium. But Mandemba is one of those places. So you can kind of picture that rock structure you see in that photo.
And I've gone into the close-up of it now.
Right, you're going on to number
9, which is a nice close-up of that same rock, I believe. Pretty amazing.
And the reason I included this particular picture, it's a whole nother discussion, is fracture lines and hardscape. But the Mandemba, there's another picture coming up that people look at and go, wow. But most of the plant, a lot of the plants, especially West African plants, especially Anubias, and from Southeast Asia, Bucephalandra, and even Cryptocorin to some extent, well, not to some extent, definitely Cryptocorin, they live a part of their life, sometimes the majority of their life, emergently growing up out of water. And when we are putting them in aquariums, we're capturing a very small part of that plant's life cycle, and we're isolating it there. We're saying, okay, we're going to grow a lawn of crypts across the bottom of our aquarium, and we're going to keep it that way for the life of the aquarium. And there's nothing wrong with that. But to think of it as being a natural biotope or a natural situation isn't exactly the same, because it doesn't have that same wet dry period that a lot of plants do. And there's only one place I've been where I found Anubias growing in water deep enough that it would never dry out.
Really?
It's just one place, yeah.
So I've transitioned into the next shot, which is a wide shot again.
Yes. Okay, so there's that one of those pictures. Let me see what's coming up. Okay, not this one, but this picture right here kind of shows you all that dark green broadleaf plant that you see growing over the rocks in the Anubias.
Really?
Yes, we are in the water. It's all crenum and bulbitis.
Right.
But bulbitis is also marginal. It actually grows up like a palm almost, it looks like, out of the water. I don't know if I included a picture of bulbitis or not, but but we're in low water. Right now we're where the water is the lowest, but in high water, everything you see is underwater.
Right.
And then now it's above water, and all that green moss on the rocks and all those Anubias are underneath the water. And the reality is, more than likely, that is not the growth phase of the plant. They are probably dormant when water's flowing over them more than anything else. You gotta realize this is pretty shaded. I mean, this is
there's trees covering the entire system.
Right. So when you cover water and the trees, there's not enough light hitting those plants for them to be reproductive. When people get their Anubias to bloom underwater, it is a testament to the density of light that's hitting them.
Right.
It's a lot more light than they normally get.
Yeah. So I've gone into a slightly closer shot where you can actually make up that's a Nubius, or hopefully you can kind of
Right.
make out that it's a Nubius.
Yeah, this is the picture that when I show this to aquascaping groups and aquascaping clubs and people that are really into aquascapes, people go, ooh, because yeah, that is where you can frame that and you can say, now, all right, now we're talking. There's hardscape and there's plants, and you can make that happen. And what a beautiful, beautiful place. And this trip was in 2009. It was my very first trip ever. So I've been traveling now for 11 years. That's, I started late in life. And my advice to everybody out there who wants to travel, go, because I wish I had not waited until I was, 42 to go and had the second half of my life to travel. I wish I'd started early. This is the only place I've been that looks like this.
Yeah. So Katie says, so beautiful. Jen Williams says, love that rock, which feels very on brand for Jen. Jen was in a live stream a few weeks ago with me.
Right.
Joanna says, thanks for sharing this. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing some of these photos with us. And then Nick, who I believe you also know, asks, how humid was it there, Nick Kinzer?
Oh, very. I mean, we're talking, from a Fahrenheit scale, about 90 degrees Fahrenheit and about 99% humidity. But that's, yeah, very humid. And I think that's another thing to remember, that for a lot of these tropical plants, they have to have that kind of humidity or they dry out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really wish that I was more into plants 10 years ago than I am now. I probably would have paid much more careful attention to what I was seeing. But I really wasn't. I was much more into fish at that time. Right.
But you're not an aquascaper. So like, why do you go out in the wild and look at this stuff? What draws you in?
I'm gonna take offense to that. I'm not.
Let me rephrase. You have previously defined yourself as, I'm excited to talk with someone that's really into aquascaping about this.
Okay. So. All right. Okay. So am I a competitive aquascaper? No.
I should have clarified.
Is my hobby shaped around aquascaping? No. Do I try to create engaging and unique aquascapes in my aquariums? Yes, but you're right. I'm not one of these guys that goes out and tries to recreate something like that, but maybe I will. That kind of keep my options open.
Yeah.
I think every aquarist somewhere in there is an aquascaper. Somewhere in there is somebody, even if they are breeding a pistogramma or they're breeding catfish, at some point someone goes, no, I'm gonna put the spawning cave there next to the plant because it looks nicer. I think everybody at some point tries to make their aquariums aesthetically pleasing. And thank whoever for the advancing of aquascaping to teach us more about the artistic side to make that visions come true. I mean, I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with Jen Williams, spending a lot of time with Rachel O'Leary, with a lot of people who are very, very good aquascapers. And they know, they'll probably admit it, that I ask an awful lot of questions about aquascaping because I learned from everybody about doing that kind of stuff. I learned things from you, just from your artistic eye when you make videos and how you shoot videos.
Yeah.
I learn a lot about how you make an aquarium look better. So aquascaping is fantastic.
Yeah, and on that note, I want to encourage everyone that's watching to go check out your infinity aquarium that you're setting up right now, because I think there's no plants in it. I don't think you're planning on ever putting plants in there.
There will not be a plant in it.
Because it's super dark, but it's a really, really cool setup where, I'll let you describe what your goal was with that.
Well, the Infinity Aquarium, it's actually on my channel. There's a playlist called the 265-gallon aquarium, or the custom aquarium 265-gallon aquarium. And it's a 265-gallon tank. It's 5 feet by 3 feet by 30 inches tall, but you're looking at it from a 3 foot wide side. You're looking at it on end, so to speak.
I'm still here. I just am running out of battery, so I'm going to plug in.
And the idea is that as it's going to be lit in such a way that you really can't make out the back of the tank. And so fish are going to be able to swim towards the back and kind of disappear into the murk and come back. And actually the motivation for that, the inspiration for it, is the Ocean Voyager exhibit at the Atlanta Aquarium. So if you, or Georgia Aquarium, not Atlanta Aquarium, Georgia Aquarium, where the whale sharks are at. So if you go to that exhibit, it's 300 feet deep and it's 60 feet wide. And the whale sharks, the water density of the aquarium is such, the salt water is that you can only see about 100 feet into salt water before the water density obscures your vision, no matter how bright it is. So these whale sharks swim in laps. And as you're watching this tank, a whale shark swims away from you and just slowly disappears into the murk. And then a couple minutes later, it comes back because it's just swimming laps. That's all it's doing. So I'm like, okay, how can you recreate that in a freshwater aquarium in your home? And the only way to do that is with creative lighting. And
also having a tank that's 5 feet front to back, or is it even bigger than that front to back?
It's no front. Well, front. Okay, my front. It's 5 feet.
Yeah, your front. You put it the wrong way. The wrong way for an aquarium.
The way the tank was built was it's 3 feet, so it's 3 feet wide. So it has to be with lighting and it has to be with darkness. So the tank is not very brightly lit, but it's lit enough that when the fish come up into the light, they'll be able to see them. As a matter of fact, I got the heaters figured out on it. The tank is now up 76. That's what we're doing this weekend, putting fish in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I should have waited for a few hours so that we could, or a few days so that we could live stream in front of the fish tank.
Oh, yeah. Oh, go to the next picture.
So I'm on number 12 now.
Okay, so that brushy palm.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
That's Bulbetus hidalgii.
Is it really?
Yeah. That is the emergent form of Bulbitis. It looks like a palm. It's a fern, obviously, but it gets about 3.5 feet tall, 2.5, 3 feet tall. And then underneath that in the water is the underwater version of Bulbitis. Now I have seen aquarists growing Bulbitis in paludariums with a bright enough light. You don't really need that bright a light, but you do need the humidity, that have been able to get Bulbitis to grow emergently. And you actually see that. And it's actually one of the, so I'll admit it. So down in Ted's Fish Room, my infinity tank is Project Now. Project Next, a year away, no time soon, I am going to attempt to recreate Mundemba in a paludarium.
So, I mean, that sounds awesome. So you're going to go like a full biotope with exactly the species that you saw here?
Well, not exactly, because I don't know exactly what they all are. But I'm going to try to recreate that look. But I'm also going to try to do it with laminar flow. So I'm going to try to do it with all the water coming in at one end, but with enough volume capacity in the aquarium. It's going to be a 6-foot-long aquarium they'll collect the water at the other end. So the flow should all be one direction with turbulence, but I'm hoping to be able to produce that. But it's still very, very much in the planning stages.
Yeah, that sounds like
ways away.
That sounds, wow. I mean,
yeah,
you're going to have a lot of pumps to make that work. Because I think that's the other thing that people don't realize until you go out into nature of how much current these fish are swimming against. I've now pushed in on the close-up. Like I've zoomed in the photo so that we now have a close-up of the Bulbitis. Okay. And now that it's close-up, I can see, well, now that you're telling me that it's Bulbitis, I believe that it's Bulbitis.
Right.
So I actually saw the emergent form in Aquarium Zen out in Seattle, Washington. He had Bulbitis growing out of one of his tanks, and the entire aquascape underneath the surface was just the root system of the Bulbitis.
Did it have any fronds at all? Did it have any plant fronds at all?
Under the surface? I don't believe it did. I think it was entirely emergent. And it was, but so basically underneath the surface, and you can see it in a couple of shots in the video I did on Aquariums and back in, I think, October.
I'll go look again.
I'll go
look again.
It's not the main tank. You'll now that you're looking for it, you'll spot it. But it's a big root system, and then on top of that is the bulbitis. My memory is that there's nothing below the surface in terms of aquatic life. I might be wrong about that.
When I was there waiting in that river, I walked over to that plant, not knowing what it was until I saw the bulbitis fronds, as we know it, growing underneath it, and it was growing densely underneath it. So I don't know. I'm really hoping to be able to recreate that. It may have to do with lighting or whatever. We'll see if we can make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it honestly for the tank behind me, though, the custom aquarium tank, the 150. Like, it'd be kind of cool to have emergent bulbitis kind of pouring out. Yeah. That's probably not the first scape that I'll do with it, but maybe 6 months or a year down the road, I might try to do something that's a little bit more emergent. Because I've got the space above the tank, so might as well fill it with some plant life.
Put something in there.
Exactly. So
let's go on to.
So I've actually switched over to a thing that you're going to have to watch the live stream to see, which is I've moved on to footage that I shot in the Rio Negro, and eventually we will actually also see some clips from Katie, who is in the chat as well. And I just wanted to share this with folks of what's happening in this system. So this is very similar to what you just showed. It's a small stream system that's completely in shade, and there's almost no plant life below the surface, but it's very, very densely planted or populated with plants above the surface. But once the video actually shows up for you, how I filmed this was I just kind of floated down the current, and you can see how fast I'm moving through the stream, and that's just my body being carried by the current. Right. Now, in this clip, I didn't really include any shots of fish because I was just trying to get a sense of like the habitat. So there are a couple of fish that occasionally swim through, but largely I'm just focusing on like, man, there's so much debris in this system, these giant rocks that are creating barriers for the water, which allow for an area for the fish to rest so that they're not constantly fighting the stream. Right. So yeah, I mean, it was something that I was so, and you can see how dark the water is as well. It's super, super tannin laden because there's so much biological material in the water.
It's the Rio Negro. That's why they call it that.
It is the Rio Negro. That's why it's black water, the Black River. That's exactly right. And then moving on from that, I also want to share a shot that I set up and just walked away from. And you can see some tetras swimming around, and you can see a couple of aquatic plants in a flooded plain area where you can actually see how much space these fish have to live in. And I think it's something that we saw over and over and over with a lot of the small fish that we saw, because the small fish live in the shallow areas where the big fish can't go. Right. But the small fish they're living in maybe 8 inches of water. That's like the max for a lot of these areas because they don't want the big cichlids coming in and eating them.
Or sometimes even shallower. I mean,
there were instances where we were, I guess, snorkeling, but really what we were doing was laying in a puddle with our face.
It just came up, so I can see it now. So yeah, pretty typical.
There's a little bit of plant. Like I'm not 100% confident that that's even truly an aquatic plant. It may be a terrestrial plant that's in a flooded area, but I think this was. I guess this is still the wet-ish season. It's on the drier side of the wet season. So if those don't have an aquatic form, they've been living submerged for several months now.
Well, there's a lot of wood in that habitat. I'm just watching the amount of logs and sticks and stuff in the bottom of that. Yeah, and I've been in many places where there's the rocks. Those are actually some really big rocks.
Yeah, giant rocks.
That's
rocks the size of cars.
Yeah, We were on the Rio Negro a few years ago, and there weren't any big rocks. What there were is big, huge shelves of rock, basically big, huge, you know, buried house size or larger town size outcroppings of basalt that the river kind of runs around, and sand. And that was basically it. But wow, that's an awful lot of wood. Well, no wonder the Rio Negro is so dark. It's that much wood in it.
Right? Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So hopefully around now, maybe you'll be seeing the other form. I would suggest maybe actually refreshing the feed because it seems like you've actually drifted off a bit from where we are.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that worked.
But you see the static
little
shot that we're talking about
coming
here.
around. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's also something that like there's something intriguing to me about the idea of doing shallow tanks.
Yes.
And shallow but a larger footprint. And I know why we don't use them.
So is that an Eleocharis? Is that the plant in there?
I don't know. So here's the crazy thing. I was busy shooting other stuff, so I just stuck the GoPro in the water and then walked away. And I actually just found this clip this afternoon. So I've not even looked at it in detail, but that would be my guess.
That's an Eleocharis. Yeah, pretty common. You know, but that's pretty typical. I mean, what you're seeing there with the leaf litter and the sticks and a little bit of Eleocharis and lots of small fish moving about. That's pretty typical.
Yeah, I was really. It's a really special thing to see them, especially I mean when you're walking around and you're just trudging through and you see a school of tetras, of fish that you would typically see in an aquarium, that suddenly they're just a big school of little things flickering through the light. I also am going to show you. So this is footage that this is footage that Katie shared with me, and let me actually pull it up and make sure that it's looping. Yeah. So this is footage that Katie shared with me. I didn't color correct anything. I did not make this look as good as it could have been. So apologies to Katie. But she actually was lucky enough to see angelfish, which is something that I did not see.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of what the footage in this clip is seeing some of the angels and the habitat that they live in.
Okay, so what I'm seeing right now is like some larger tetra types.
Yeah. I mean, I just know that we're gonna get there. And this is again, you know the backstory of what happened tonight. Why we're a little bit late to this is that I was frantically trying to drop everything in. So I literally took a bunch of clips that Katie shared with me previously and literally just dropped them into the timeline.
Oh, pike cichlids, that's what those are.
Yeah,
pike cichlids. So you're gonna see more of those in a minute.
I'm
like Marmoratus. That's really nice.
I'm looting your story a little bit here.
It's all right. But hey, everybody pay attention to this because you're going to see some more video coming up that looks a bit like this, just showing you that the habitat is habitat. South America, Colombia versus Brazil versus Peru. A lot of it's very, very similar.
Right. I'm just waiting. Hopefully we get to see some of the angels show up eventually because I think it's kind of cool. There's the angels are playing.
They're there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not playing for whoever's watching now, but for us, they're playing. That
very nice.
They really live in really, really protected areas because they're very little finicky, scared fish in spite of their size. So they're always under really, really heavy cover, which is not something that we typically provide them in the aquarium.
Yes. The other thing to consider is what they eat.
Yeah.
They're invertebrate predators. I mean, so basically they're picking small things off of structures and so forth. So in that dense cover is where they're going to find more of their food too.
Right.
Yeah. My first trip to Colombia, we went down specifically. I went down. One thing, my goal was to catch ultim angels way the native collectors collect Altum angels. I want to see how the industry kind of runs around Altums. And basically, it's dugout canoes in the middle of the night with headlamps and big long-handled dip nets, because at night, the angelfish get driven up to the surface by the big predatory fish, and they hide in the sticks. And all you're doing is sticking a net under them and dipping them out. Every Altum angel that comes into the hobby is caught that way.
Right.
They're not seined. They're not caught in mass. The Colombia doesn't allow them to be collected during a time of year when you could seine them out that way. They're all hand collected one at a time. But that's how you find them, is you find them in that really dense cover and brush in the middle of the night, avoiding predators.
Right, exactly. So with that, I think let's transition to the upper Cano Verity, let's call it.
Hang on that still photo for a minute, because
our lovely wide shot.
Yes, because the next two things you're going to show are clips. All right.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be able to see exactly what's happening in the clip. I want to set that up now.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so the Cano Verity is a relatively short stream in Colombia, in the far northeastern corner of the country, near where the Rio Meta and the Rio Orinoco meet, near the town of Puerto Carreño. The image you see is at the headwaters. So that what you see in the background is called a moriche swamp. It's a palm trees. And there are springs that are coming up in those palm trees that are boiling water up out of the ground that become this stream. And we are going to be, the video you're going to see, the first video is in this stretch of water you see right here, all the way up to those palm trees in the background is where that's at. It is literally the headwaters of this stream. And the diversity of fish life is incredible. You're going to see schools of flagtail procholotus. You're going to see black piranha. You're going to see peacock bass. You're going to see severums. You're going to see mesonoda. You're going to see aquidens mete. You're going to see tetras. You're going to see all kinds of things that I wish I could kind of point out as they go across the screen. But from an aquascaping perspective, keep in mind that almost all the structure you see is dead plant material. It's either a stick or a palm frond or something. There's only one or two species of live plants that are living in the water, and none of them are very, very lush. So go ahead and play the first clip.
I'm playing it, and this is the first time I'm seeing this clip as well, which is exciting. So right now we are above the water line. We're looking at everything, and it looks like we're about to go underwater, and we are. Wow. Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah, the water is extremely clear.
The water's so clear.
And it's not black water. I mean, there is some tannin in the water, but it's not, there hasn't been enough time for water for plant matter to be in the water. I'm not caught up with you. There's not enough time for plant matter to be in the water to really get it tannin stained. And honestly, for the entire length of this stream, the water stays very, very clear.
That's amazing. So I mean, this is nothing like what we saw when we were in Brazil.
Right. So the first place you go underwater is actually a man-made dugout pond that you see that big, huge schools of procholotus and the big, huge schools of bricon tetras. That's not natural. And then it's kind of an offside of the natural part of the stream. A little small. We're going to actually, the video is actually going to take you.
Yeah, we're now looking at aquatic plants. It looks like. Yeah, they're very warm colored plants. I'm seeing it on a very small screen as well, so I'm not a very good guide on this either.
A little bit of tannin in the water there. So it's kind of cool. I think if you watch that as you go through it, you're going to see a little chocolate cichlid pop on the screen. I really wish I could see. There it is. Yes. Okay, you see the Satanoperca daemon. You see the bricons, which are the tetra with the black in the tail. The Satanoperca daemon is a cichlid with 3 spots on it.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. And at some point, you're going to see a little chocolate cichlid kind of scoot across the screen. And I became infatuated with that chocolate cichlid. But this video was taken on our second to last day in Colombia. And I really wanted to bring a chocolate cichlid home. And I worked a long time. I ended up finally catching that chocolate cichlid on a hook and line. And he's going to go in the 265. He's now 8 inches.
Oh, you still
long.
have him?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's Mesonoda, the festivum types. But yes, there are plants in this particular piece of water because it's lots of sun and relatively shallow. But once you get back into the woods and in deeper water, you don't see much. But most of the structure is just sticks, and it's all Eliocharis. See, it's all
Right.
just the grass plant.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, and what I'm seeing, you probably already saw it, was the pike kerosene, the little Belingerella type.
Yeah.
Came across. Yeah.
I mean, I think both of us, because I'm looking at the live stream along with you, we're like 20 seconds behind what everyone else is seeing.
Okay.
But hopefully people can just remember and they can they can apply.
There he is. There's the chocolate cichlid. I see him now. There he is.
How big is he for scale?
In that photo, he's about 2.5 inches.
Okay.
That video. Okay, so now we're in the main part of the spring. Matter of fact, where we're looking over is an edge. You just saw a peacock bass go across. There's other peacock bass. Down the bottom of that hole is a spring where there's water welling up out of it. So this is one of the kind of the headwaters of this entire body of water. And
I'm now seeing what you were talking about before we came on, of you talking about like if you were to take a chunk of the body of water, like you might not end up with any fish in it. That's how much water there is that these fish are swimming through.
The Equinans I'm seeing the Equinans mete go across the screen. Yep. That's a kind of a yellowish goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
And then lots of flagtail Prochilotus. I love people go and they buy flagtail Prochilotus. First of all, they get really big. So why do you want to buy one? I don't get it. And they buy one. Okay. And when you see them in groups of 10, 20, 30, 100, 200, you realize how spectacular a fish they can really be. I don't know why you don't just one. I was teasing my friend Jeff Cardwell the other night on the live stream I do on Instagram on Tuesday nights. He has an African cichlid tank that has one flagtail Prochilotus in it. I was teasing him about it, but he's like, after seeing him in the wild, he had to have one. He just likes those kind of fish. But yeah, I think I'm at the point now where you're going to start seeing the piranha pop up right into the camera. That's a black piranha, a young one. Big ones get really, really big. And I was amazed at how curious and how intelligent those black piranha were.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the flag. I'm seeing flagtail Prochilotus on the screen now, a big school of them. So,
yeah, I mean, we certainly saw piranha, but never in the water. I never saw piranha in the water. We caught and ate a lot of piranha when we were down there.
They're good.
They're pretty good.
Yes, there are severums in there. I'm looking. I can see the the comments. So yeah, but yeah, this is a special place. This is one of those places where I go to South America, I go fish collecting, I collect fish. There's a few places where if I were to take a group of people, I would say, we're going to go, we're going to snorkel, we're going to take all the photos you want, but we're not going to net.
Yeah.
This place, we captured a few fish. The next video is one of those places that I wouldn't want to take nets. It's just extreme. This is nice. The next place is better. And it's the same stream, but it's all the way down the other end within maybe we maybe explored a 1/4 mile of the stream before it confluenced with a different river system.
And so Robert asks, what's the yellowish fish with the black spots?
That's the Sitanoperca daemon. It used to be called Geophagus daemon. So Sitanoperca daemon, they get about 8 inches.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful aquarium fish. They really are. It's a sand sifter.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next shot because we're now looping. Right now we're flowing up. We see a boat coming upstream.
Yes. That's the Cano Negra. That is the river that the Cano Verity flows into. And then the Cano Negra flows into the Rio Orinoco. So we're traveling up on these boats, and it's almost impassable. There are a couple places where we had to really try hard to get over logs and things like that to get in there. And then you're just kind of going up, and the water in the Cano Negra is clear, but it's not as clear as the Cano Verity.
But it looks,
but you
it's
can
so
see
clear.
stingrays, but then the video changes, and you can see us heading up into the Cano Verity. You see how clear the water is. Now,
Right,
this is an Indian reservation,
Okay.
so it's a protected area. So you really shouldn't be collecting fish there. We weren't collecting fish there. We didn't do anything other than in the Cano Negra, we caught some peacock bass on hook and line to be able to look at them. But now you can see how crystal clear the water is in the Cano Verity. And look how white the sand is. The first fish that really popped up on the video is a big school of those Satanoperca daemon. And I'm looking at a section that is one of the other inspirations for the Infinity Aquarium, where I'm out in the sunlight and I'm looking up into underneath a bunch of branches and plants where it's very shadowy. And that, you know, that now I'm looking at the section of sand where the sunlight is flickering.
Yeah, it's so shimmery.
That's another thing I'm trying to create in that aquarium, and I've done it. I'm actually able to make that happen in my aquarium with LED lights and water flowing across the surface of the tank.
Yeah, that seems to be, I mean, the key to getting that shimmer
is the LEDs.
Yeah, it's direct. It's not directional.
Spotlights.
It's single point light sources.
Spotlights.
Like the sun.
Right. And that's what, and so the way I'm lighting this 265-gallon tank is with 6 spotlights. Very small, inexpensive spotlights.
Yeah, I thought they were actually, I thought you were showing, because you posted this on your Instagram, of these little teeny lights. They're like that big.
Yeah.
And I was like, is he showing us little microphones? What's happening?
No, it's lights.
Yeah.
And it works. I ordered 2 more. I had 4 on the tank the other night. I want a little more brightness. I ordered 2 more lights that can plug into my little controller. And I think that'll be enough. But now I'm looking at such parts of the video. So white sand, lots of wood, lots of sticks.
There's a snake on screen.
Ah, yes. So whenever you see snakes like this and you don't know what it is, you assume it's venomous. These are not venomous, though. Okay, here comes the snake. So yeah. It's
you assume it's venomous, but you're awfully close to a snake that you're supposed to be assuming is venomous.
No, I'm not very close to it at all. I'm probably 5 feet away from it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
My camera, and then that's digital zoom. So
gotcha.
Yeah, I'm floating, and that snake's in the bottom of the stream.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
And there are 2 of them. That was really cool. And if there's 2, there's probably 6.
Right.
So yeah, it turns out it's a colubrid. It's not a venomous snake at all, which I wish we had known, because if we had known that it was non-venomous, we'd have caught it. You know, we would have caught it and gotten good photos. But you don't mess with. My best snake story ever was we were in Cameroon on the Cameroon trip, and we were seining in a stream, and it was very muddy water, and we pulled the seine up, and it was about a 10-foot seine, 8-foot seine. In the middle of the seine, there were a few fish flopping around, and there was a water cobra, which is a relatively common snake. And they're not super toxic, but they're still a cobra, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and the guy I was with was Anton Lamboy. So if you're familiar with the fish world and you know scientist, Dr. Anton Lamboy invited me on this trip, and we're sitting there looking at it, and we're looking for a very rare cichlid in that water. And so we're both on either end of the seine trying to see if there's anything in the seine that was really interesting from a fish perspective. And we decided smartly that there was not. And we 1, 2, 3 heaved the whole seine and everything, snake and everything included, back up into the rainforest and went on collecting. But yeah, that's the closest
you went back
to a venomous snake in the wild. That's it.
So you dumped the snake back in.
No, we threw him up into the rainforest.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So there is a chocolate cichlid coming up on the screen. That's a bigger one. That's probably about as big as the one I have now, about 8 inches.
Wow.
So yeah, I think chocolate cichlids are really cool. He's one of my favorite fish.
Yeah, and now it looks like we've got, there's a catfish on screen, it looks like.
Yes, yeah, we did see some catfish on this trip. I didn't get it on photograph, but there was a tiger shovel-nosed catfish in the middle of this big pool. And it just so happened that I saw him, got my camera ready to shoot, and he swam off. But that's like a fox-faced catfish, a Pimadella family fish. That's kind of close to the end of the video, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've now restarted the video.
Okay.
So just your general takeaways from that, like what do you hope that people get from seeing footage like this?
One, I wanted people to kind of get the idea of you had groups of fish, really decent sized fish, big severums, big pheasants, big pike cichlids, that the fish may have been grouped, but there was an awful lot of space around them. So we often crowd fish quite a bit in aquariums, and they live just fine. And my aquarium downstairs, my 180-gallon aquarium, has got a lot of fish, far more fish, far more dense than you're ever going to see in the wild. But as we all try to get into this idea of recreating the way habitats look and aquascaping and so forth, don't be afraid to put together a beautiful aquascape with 2 fish. Don't be afraid to do that. Why not have a 180-gallon aquarium with beautifully aquascaped with a group of 7 severums or 4 severums or 5 severums? It will be a beautiful tank. It'll look very, very natural.
Right.
But we all like fish.
And the other thing is, I think my little hobby horse is if you have a few fish, you think of them as pets. If you have a bunch of fish, they become less valuable. You become less concerned with their health, less concerned with their well-being. So having a tank with just a couple of fish, not only is it totally a viable option, but it also makes each one of them a pet that you can actually start to recognize them as individuals, which is that's something I've found for sure.
Cichlids and catfish, I think that becomes easier to do because they are such long-lived fish, and they're very personable fish. They have personalities to them. Schools of cardinal tetras or schools of they tend not to be that way. That's one reason I like larger fish. I mean, I have some tetras, but I have big tetras, and they're individuals in my mind as well. I've got 3 black bar silver dollars. I call them the Stooges, Larry, Moe, and Shep, because Curly's not really a stooge.
I only barely know what you're talking about. I know the Stooges, and I've looked at the Wikipedia article describing which are the Stooges and how long were each of them part of the 3 Stooges, and that there were 4 Stooges for a while. But you're really pushing the limits of my pop culture knowledge of the 50s or 60s?
Oh, 30s.
30s. Any number of time. A long time ago. The Stooges stayed around for a long time, in fairness. I'm pretty sure they were still making films in the 50s, weren't they? Doesn't matter. That's not what this live stream's about. Let's move on.
Let's jump down to number 16. This is going to go back to Mexico.
Yeah, so we are now, you would think something would be happening right now. Is nothing happening? Nothing's on screen. Bear with me. Okay, so we've kind of jumped in. I can't see what's going on. I'm on a little teeny screen. It looks like there's an incredibly tall, is it Val? What am I looking at here?
You're looking at reeds. Okay,
reeds.
So what you're looking at is a estanque. So this is another spring. So that area of Mexico, which is down there at Cano Verity, which is, I think, northeast of San Luis Potosi, that area, yes, now I can see it. That area was at one time a huge freshwater lake. It was massive. And then the waters receded, and all it left were these springs called the estanques. And each estanque has only got a limited number of fish and only 1 or 2 species of plants in it. And this particular one only had 2 native plants, a reed, which is that big tall plant coming into it, and a water lily growing on the bottom. That's it. All the marginal plants, I'm not counting those. They're kind of creeping in from the sides, but those are the only aquatic plants. And then there's also some non-natives. There's some invasive plants we saw in there as well, like a Ludwigi or something like that, but they said they really don't belong there. The fish, there were two cichlids. There was Hericles labradens and Hericles pertoni, two of the same genus, both living side by side in the same estanque. There's a Dayad livebearer. There's Mexican mollies. There's a shiner. There's another Goodea. There's two Goodeids because there's a Tenorus toweri, the blue-tailed Goodea that's in there. But that's it. It's an extremely low diversity of living things, but the density of life in that estanque was rich. I mean, there was just living things almost everywhere. The very middle of it, and you kind of go across it in one of these videos, is kind of open sand where the water is just deep enough that it's a little too dark for those lilies to be able to grow. But I said earlier about how plants can be the structure. Those reeds are the structure. And as you look, there's Nasty Annex tetra too. You can see that on there. But as the reeds, they grow up from the bottom up out of the water, and they grow in clumps, and there's space between the clumps. And that is the physical structure, the hardscape, if you will, in that estanque. And there's a couple of sticks that may have fallen in, but that's it.
Right.
Is the reeds themselves. And then there's a video coming up of a female Hericles labradens guarding.
Yeah, with some fry. That's what's
right. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's no longer on screen. I think now we see
probably Bertoni.
Two black and white fish.
That's the Hericles Bertoni. So what's interesting about that particular two species of fish is they're the same genus, and yet they can live in this confined space and not hybridize. One of the problems we have in that part of Mexico is that the Rio Verity, the river that all these little springs flow into eventually, has Hericles carpintus. And one of the most the most famous of these estanques, which is the name is escaping me, but it's in downtown Palo Verde. It's a big swimming pool area. They dug a canal from the river into that estanque so people can get boats up and down it, and people can swim up and down it, and allowed the Hericles carpintus to get up into it. And they hybridized with the labradens. But in this particular estanque that we're in, there's no carpintus. So they don't hybridize in there. And it's amazing to me that two species of the same genus, and honestly, that's a clue that maybe they're not the same genus.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to ask you. Like, that sounds like they might not actually be as closely related as we think they are.
Right. And right now, there's a lot of examples like that in the world. But in West Africa, it's a bit of a clue too. There's a lot of Chromidotilapia, for example, that there are 2 or 3 species in the same rivers. They're probably not all Chromidotilapia. But this would be a really neat habitat to try to create an aquarium.
I mean, yeah.
It would be from a scale perspective. And when I talk to the biotope people, the people who they would say, okay, you have to have a biotope aquarium. You've got to have the exact species of plant and the exact species of fish and all this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, well, I want to do this estanque azul from Mexico. Here's the video. Here's the problem. I've got a 135-gallon aquarium, and I want to recreate this. That lily, that one species of lily, which is endemic to that area of Mexico, by the way, you can actually get it, and you can get it. The leaves are 12 to 18 inches across.
Right.
But I can make a banana plant do that.
I see where you're going with this.
I can take a 135-gallon aquarium, and I can plant banana plants in the bottom. And I'm from a scale perspective, and the reed, I can't grow that reed, but I can use an artificial that looks just like it. I can use a fake plant that is structurally doing the exact same thing. And I can use smaller I can get the Mexican mollies, I can get the other stuff. I can make an aquarium look and represent that, but I can't do it as a biotope, right, with all the same species and everything. So
that's an interesting.
What's the goal?
So I just switched over to screenshots of those two as you were speaking about them, and I'm going back to the video now.
Right.
That's an interesting perspective that I hadn't really thought about, of scaling up and down the species that you work with,
Right.
to simulate the form, not
Right.
necessarily the specifics.
What's the goal? I mean, we can't create we cannot, because of scale, we cannot recreate the wild environment exactly. But can we represent the wild environment in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what about habitats where you can't collect fish? What about habitats where maybe the fish are gone, or the plants are gone, or you can't get plants from it? Can you get a plant that has got a broad, a stem plant that has a broad red leaf, and you can't get that plant, but I could grow red Ludwigia to represent that plant? And the overall package of what you're producing in the aquarium can look like that habitat. That has value too. So this is why, when I get into my arguments with the biotope competition guys, I'm like, you can't do it, so why pretend you can do it?
Right. Well, what I'm to be the counterpoint to this, do you know if any of the species in this system rely on the plants for either habitat or nutrients?
Obligately?
Yeah.
In other words, they have to have it?
Right.
No, because every single one of those fish that are in that estanque are available in the hobby without the plants.
And can they be bred successfully in the hobby as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. All of them are. Every single one of them, except maybe the shiner.
Yeah.
That's probably not a very pretty shiner, but okay. So the Astyanax mexicanum, you're not going to be able to find that particular tetra. But you know what it looks exactly like? I mean, I would challenge you, if I handed you the fish and say, what is this? You'd go, that's a Buenos Aires tetra. It's an Astyanax. It's a Buenos Aires tetra. So you could use Buenos Aires tetras and put them in a tank. They already are on the screen. I see them right now. Yeah. And the average person, I would say the above average person, would know that they're not Astyanax mexicanum.
That's really interesting.
But you can get the Herictes labradens. You can get and the place in Palo Verde, the famous one is the Media Luna. So the Media Luna Herictes labradens is the same species as the Herictes labradens that's in this estanque. Okay, but in Media Luna, they're almost all hybridized with Carpentus now. That's the problem. But they're not all different species. They're all in different estanques. But there's hundreds of these estanques.
And remind me, when did they form? When were they formed?
Just after the last ice age.
Okay, so 10,000-ish years?
Yeah.
So there's true genetic isolation there.
There is true genetic isolation, but there's not enough time to make it mean anything yet.
10,000 years is enough time to make it mean, but they have
not evolutionarily. 10,000 years is a blink.
I disagree, but I can't say that you're wrong. But
if you're a bacteria, I guess it can go a lot faster.
Right. I guess it depends on how long their breeding cycle is, but I imagine they breed every year. And
I imagine they breed all year round.
Right. But I'm from birth to being reproductive is probably less than 6 months.
Right. One thing to remember about extremely small habitats like this, evolutionary biology. Now you're getting into my education level.
I'm excited. Lay it on me.
One thing you got to remember when you're getting into extremely small pockets of habitat, where this whole entire estanque is less than an acre, it's really small.
Right.
Is that genetically that population is probably almost all all close to identical. It's probably almost all homogenic. So there's probably not a lot of genetic drift that can happen within that population at all. You might be able to get a mutation to create a new genetic type, but will that mutation have an effect? And most likely the odds are that it's not going to have an effect. So
that's interesting.
Now when you take Lake Malawi, for example, and you have this big, huge lake, and you've had very rapid speciation in the lake, but it's still a really, really big lake. And you have these populations, but there's gene flow between those populations that can add new and different forms, novel forms into into those populations. But this estanque, it doesn't have any gene flow. It is relying on pretty much entirely on mutation to create those new forms and new combinations of genes, which probably isn't going to happen.
Right. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. I mean, it also like speaks to how, I mean, there's what, maybe a dozen-ish species of fish in that system, somewhere around there.
I think there's 9 species.
And it's clearly a stable ecosystem with 9 species. I think I saw some shrimp in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's lots of microscopic everything
there's probably
keeping the system alive.
Insect larvae, there's things like that too.
But I mean, that's a quite small population.
Right. So my host when I'm in that area of Mexico is Juan Miguel Luis Artigas, who is he's a biologist, he's a naturalist, he's a world speaker on Mexican fish, Mexican cichlids, especially cactus. Mm-hmm. He knows where hundreds of these estanques are, and he'll tell you that they all have about the same species. And some will have, let's say there's I don't know for sure, 12 species of fish in that area. And those springs will all have a collection of those 12 species. Maybe not all 12, maybe 9 of them, but there isn't like one estanque that has one species that isn't found someplace else because it hasn't been isolated long enough for that to happen.
Right.
What's creating the problems, like we pulled, when we were there, we saw black bass. We saw largemouth bass that someone had let go in it. That is going to be the death of these kind of places if sport fish like that or predator fish get in there to eat everything up. We also saw tilapia. The only way to get there is someone to go dump them in there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, clearly I'm wrong, but I'm still shocked at how there hasn't been speciation. Because 10,000 years is a lot. I mean, that's 20,000 plus generations. But I mean, I guess you're right that there's not the factors that would cause rapid speciation.
The founding population was probably small enough that the genetic variation within the founding population wasn't broad enough to create enough ingredients to make different mixtures. That's the way of looking at it. You know, there's a part of evolutionary biology is there in population. There's homogeneity and there's heterogeneity. And homogeneity tells you that there are populations of animals where almost all the genes in the animal are homogeneous. So instead of there being 20 different types of gene for a color, there's only 2, or maybe there's only 1. Everything has it. A very interesting study was done several years ago looking at a homogeneous population of fish in West Africa. And the argument was that this fish was extremely stable in the environments that it lived in. Care to guess what species of fish that is that was homogeneous?
Not even a little bit do I care to guess. Tell me.
Okay, it's Pelvochromis pulcher.
Okay.
The common aquarium crib. And I saw that and I started thinking about this. Now, let's think about that for a sec, because Pelvochromis cribensis, what used to be called Pelvochromis taeniatus, it's one of those species that we get it in the hobby, and within 2 or 3 generations, it peters out. It stops breeding. It's not very fecund. The wild fish produce lots and lots of babies, but the F1, F2 generations kind of fall off. But Pelvochromis pulcher, the common crib, it just breeds like gangbusters, and now it is produced in huge numbers, thousands and thousands of generations away from wild, and it's a homogeneous species.
Right.
It makes you wonder how many other extremely successful aquarium fish that really look the same, that haven't changed a whole lot. Cherry barbs, red-tailed sharks, you name it, tiger barbs. How many of these fish, I have no idea because I haven't made a study of it, are also genetically homogeneous?
Right.
Is that a secret to success, is being genetically homogeneous? I don't know.
I mean, I don't have the answers. I'm not prepared for this conversation, but I'm really glad that you shared all this with me, because evolutionary biology is super interesting, and it's something that I have had to learn a lot about because of my job,
Right.
but never went to school for. So it's like I know enough to be dangerous, but it's really cool to hear insights on it.
Let's
Um,
let's jump to the very last
the
video.
very last video. So guys, we are at the very last video.
This is the bonus. This is that Vishada Pond. This is in eastern Colombia. This is a spring that comes up out of the ground and is isolated. There's probably not a predator in it. This is that place that I believe is as close as I've seen to a natural aquarium. It's got one aquatic species of plant and it's dense.
Mm-hmm.
And we found, I think, that we were able to identify at least 10 species of tetra between splash tetras and things like that.
I mean, it's amazing. It's so dense. It's so alive.
Right.
Yeah, this is one of the densest clips that I've seen of a freshwater environment. I mean, you see densities of that in the marine environment.
There were pencil fish in there. There were Hephaestrobricon tetras in there. There were probably the same. I mean, I don't even know what all the genuses were, but I mean, just tons and tons and tons. We found lots of cool marginal plants. We found a variegated Lewigia that was marginal, but that kind of a wispy, almost guppy grass looking plant. And people who know plants identified it. And then at the end of the pond, as the water spills out, is we have this big tall Eleocharis. That's right. The Eleocharis. It's big. But the actual the pond itself was just all that kind of a weird wispy looking plant. And the bubbles you see coming up are oxygen, but the big bubbles is fermenting, decaying plant matter in the bottom of the pond.
Right.
You know, so pond farts.
Yeah.
Down to. But nice. All that sheen you see on the surface, that's just air bubble because there's no current. There's nothing to break up that surface tension.
Remind me, where does the water outflow?
From the very bottom. Oh, outflow.
Yeah.
There's basically it wells up and it has a spillway, but the spillway is choked with plants. So it's actually filtering through those piles of Eleocharis for about 10, 15 feet. And then it spills into a stream that's only about 6 inches deep. And it only goes about 100 yards before it hits the main river.
Okay. So all these fish would have come from the main river.
Probably.
But I mean, I'm sure that there is still some genetic flow.
Yeah, we did. We were, after I shot this video, you know, then people got in there with nets and obviously they got all messed up. We did catch one small wolffish in there, one little guy, who eventually would have been a big guy.
Right.
You know, so, but I don't even think a wolffish would have been able to clean this thing out of plants. Now, it's also possible that this dries up in the dry season.
Yeah.
Very possible. I don't think it would dry up completely. I think it would be tough for dry up completely, but there is one tetra in here that I think some of the guys got it back. It's beautiful. It's kind of like a Von Rio tetra, but yellow. It's really, really pretty. Neat little fish.
And what is the surrounding area around this system?
Llanos.
I mean, it looks.
The habitat is called Llanos, Llanos. It is tropical grassland. It's mixed forest tropical grassland.
Right. So, I mean, it looks like there's direct sunlight on this.
Yes.
On this pond.
Well, there are some trees around this, so it's a little bit shaded, but away from the streams, it's just big open meadows, big cattle area.
Wow.
That we're actually on a cattle ranch. That's where we're at.
And it's so cool. It's really kind of special seeing all those fish swimming around. And I mean, clearly there's no large predators. I mean, you mentioned the wolf, but like they're behaving very nonchalantly, given that there's so much cover that you would think they'd be hiding.
They weren't afraid of the cameras. Maybe we swam across there, they'd run away from you. But like I said, it was one of those things where our guide said, "Ted, come here, quick, bring your camera, but don't tell anybody else." To get in there and get the videos, because when I think we had 6 people with us on that trip, and as soon as they found it, it's like, rah, in they go. So
Nick has commented what he believes the plant might be, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it.
Eleocharis montevidensis. I'll give you the Eleocharis because I can see where it could be that, but I have no idea what montevidensis. Now Montevideo, that's going to be named after Montevideo, Uruguay, right? Or Montevideo that's Uruguay. We're a long way from Uruguay. They could also be completely undescribed. One thing about Colombia. Colombia is a very, very special place. And one, it's the #1 exporter of tropical fish in South America. But it's also one of the least explored because they had 50 years of war, right? So you can go to Colombia and you can find plants. My friends who are really into plants like Cara Wade and Vin Cuddy and Ariel Bornstein, those guys, they love to go to Colombia because they feel every time they go down there, they're going to find a dozen species of plants that no one's ever seen in the aquarium hobby.
Right.
It's constant. Matter of fact, in this location, Kara was with us, and she found that variegated leaf Ludwigia, but she said underwater it didn't stay variegated. And then in this river, so downstream from that, in the actual river, we found a fern growing on the very bottom of the river, so it's truly aquatic, which is very different looking too.
Well, I mean, Kara's definitely on my list of people to have in the next few weeks or months on this stream, because I love Kara and she's so knowledgeable. Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to have people on that know a lot more than I do, because it's a fun learning opportunity for me. And Kara's certainly one of those people that knows an awful lot more than I do.
She knows a lot more than many people.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm going to transition to our 2 up, both of us looking at the camera with no video playing.
Okay.
Kara. Nick says Kara. Yeah, we're bad people mispronouncing Kara. So anyway, with that, I want to thank you so much for coming on this stream and sharing with us a lot of the trips that you've been on. For everyone that's here, go check out Ted's channel, Ted's Fishroom. Ted, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Any parting messages?
No, just thank you very much. I mean, I've had the opportunity to get to know you over the past 1.5 years or so. And it's always a pleasure spending time with you and spending time in the live stream, talking about things I love to talk about is, fish and traveling. So, it's all good. Yeah, please come watch Ted's Fishroom. After about a year of making almost no videos, I seem to have gotten back into it thanks to social isolation.
Yeah, and honestly, I really enjoyed watching that. That's what I was doing while I should have been prepping for this whole thing, was watching your most recent videos on Ted's Fishroom. So
I've got a few projects. I'm branching out into vivariums, which is and straw bale gardening, if you watch that one. But
can you explain what I'm not going to try to pronounce it.
Straw bale gardening.
Straw bale gardening.
Yeah, okay. It's basically growing vegetables or flowers or whatever into a bale of straw that is in the process of being composting. About the equivalent for an aquarium industry is, think about fishless cycling. You basically plantless cycle a straw bale until it can support the life of a plant, and you plant plants in it. And the reason I do it is because I have a very small garden plot and it got a virus in it. So I couldn't grow tomatoes anymore, but I could grow tomatoes in the straw bales. And that's why I switched over to straw bales.
And that's right up every fish keeper's alley of, that's the kind of content you want to subscribe to Ted's Fishroom.
Right. Go watch straw bales. Who cares?
But I'm all for posting the stuff that inspires you on your own channel.
Thank you very much. People say, what do you, it's like I post all these videos of my travels to Colombia, and people say, we love watching these. I said, I love making them. They're my least watched videos. My travel videos, people watch the least. So if it was all about views, I wouldn't make those videos, but I don't care. It's not about views for me. It's about making the videos and documenting what I've done.
I agree. Every video that's a process video for me, the setup of a tank, which I really like, does terribly. Videos of actual ecosystems do terribly. What does well are like, here's this crazy, incredible aquascape. And those are really fun to make, but I really enjoy making the other stuff where I get to like go out and film something else, and they do terribly. So they are just for me.
You know, what somebody asked me, I've been doing YouTube now. Ted's Fishroom got started in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time. I want to say there's close to 300 videos now. When people asked why I did it, I said, honestly, it's easier to I can document. I like making videos, editing them. That's a whole other hobby I enjoy doing. I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy doing it. And but it's a way to store and organize and keep your videos. They're going to be there forever. Other people can see them. That's great. Without having to store them on your own hard drive. Because I mean, as it is right now, I have a 2 terabyte hard drive sitting over here. It's full of stuff. What do I do with it now, right? So it's just all the video just kind of stacks up over time. At least on YouTube, it's going to be there. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the things that I found really rewarding, and then we will end this stream about this whole process of documenting other people's tanks on YouTube, is certainly for me, when I document one of my own tanks, it gives me permission to break it down and start something new, because it lives on in some capacity. And for all of these aquascapers that have put so much work into making something beautiful, like there's something really rewarding about giving them the opportunity to have that system live on long after it gets broken down, which I find really, really rewarding. So, that's kind of my little insight into why I ended up doing this channel in the first place. Because, I could have picked a lot of subjects. For some reason, I picked aquariums.
You're extremely good at the videos. You make beautiful, beautiful videos.
Thank you.
I wish I had that talent. But yeah, tell you what, I'm going to thank you once again for this opportunity to come on and share with you. And let's do it again sometime.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, have a lovely evening. Go check out Ted's channel. Check out Ted's YouTube channel or Instagram channel as well. Every Tuesday, he does a happy hour that you can hang out.
Right. Yes. So, please come do that. That's fine.
And he'll let you show your aquarium to the world.
That's the idea, is to come in and show us what you're doing.
So if you have an aquarium that you're really proud of, that you want the world to see, go visit Ted at what time is your happy hour?
We meet at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Tuesday nights. It's called the Tuesday Night Mixer on the Ted's Fishroom Instagram channel.
Awesome.
That only lasts for usually about 55 minutes or so. It's not all night. So.
All right. Well, on that note, I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Be well, and I will see you on Monday when I'm going to scape a tank that I set up per Rachel O'Leary, challenging all of us to set up aquariums with what we've got on hand. And Ted, I know that you've been doing that too. So look for all of that coming up. All right. Be well, everyone. Bye.
Bye.